Our bodies were not made to be sitting for long periods of time. Our bodies were not made to be statues for long periods of time. There's an element of stress manifesting physically. So the majority of stress that comes at us in the day comes from an external source. And when our brains get overloaded, stress will manifest itself physically on us. So body tension, knee bouncing, pen twirling, pen chewing, leaning forward, just different ways that your body will express that it's tired, it's stressed out, it's fatigued, the way that it physically manifests.
From slouching over laptops to stress-fueled stillness, modern work life is wrecking our posture and our productivity. But what if you didn't need a full gym routine or a standing desk overhaul to feel better? In this episode, Alessa Caridi is here to help us solve the sitting is the new smoking epidemic. In this episode, she reveals how small, smart posture shifts can transform your body, energy, and even your confidence to help you feel and perform better every day. Hey, good afternoon, Alessa. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm an open book, so let's help some people stay healthy at work.
And like you said, busy professionals, even entrepreneurs, right? They spend so many hours at the desk, but people I talk to, they want to feel better. They want to move, the movement we discussed, right? Like better posture, but without that sort of rigid fitness plan, right? And I was wondering if we could start taking us back, how did JoBuFit even begin? Was there like a personal moment that made you realize movement maybe it wasn't just about the gym, but more about everyday life?
Sure. I tell people that everything that I teach and I do kind of is this like smushed together smorgasbord of my upbringing, being raised in a family of doctors. I've danced all over the world. I was with a company through high school. Then I got my BA in dance. And then after I finished undergrad, I thought I was going to twirl around on stage forever. And then I broke my foot, and simultaneously, like while I'm healing, and I went through kind of this like mental shift and a little bit of the, light depression, because I don't want to, put too much of a heavy on that. I don't want to downplay what actual depression is. But that for me made me really kind of question everything that I was going to do, everything that I perceived that I was going to do. And my parents saw my kind of mental shift and, got a little bit worried. And that Christmas, they gifted me my first Pilates certification. Now, growing up to rehab a little bit of injury and also keep my body strong when I was dancing professionally, I always used Pilates because it's an amazing tool and it keeps you long and lean and strong and all of the ways that a dancer has to be that way. And so Pilates was for me like a natural next step. And it really got my brain back into doing like a goal, doing something and helping people get healthy, stronger, and then ultimately down the road more productive. Really was like a light bulb moment for me because I really enjoyed seeing how I could help other people succeed. And then because I'm a giant nerd, I couldn't just get one certification. So I got certified after certified after certified. And, many months later began teaching people how to become Pilates instructors. And that I quickly learned wasn't for me. I wasn't helping people actually get healthy at that point. I was, helping other people's businesses. And that I did for a very short period of time and then kind of moved on from that. And during that time period is when my now husband walked into my life and he was like, hey, I'm moving to Japan. Do you want to come with? And I was like, oh, sure. And so we moved there for 3 years. I opened up the first Pilates studio in Okinawa, Japan. And there I trained Marine sailors, soldiers, airmen, DoD professionals, stay-at-home moms, locals there, just really a whole range of bodies that were on the island for one reason or another. And it was at this point that I realized it didn't matter what people were doing. They were all complaining that by midday lunchtime, that fatigue sets in. It didn't matter if they had 7-8 hours of sleep. It didn't matter if they had a healthy diet. Everybody kind of just starts to get tired. And then by 3 o'clock, everyone is complaining their back hurts, their shoulder hurts, their head and their neck is holding tension, all of the issues that we see. And again, it didn't matter what they did. They all had the same issues. So I'm a healthy person. I start my day with a walk every day. And I noticed that being in Japan, we have in America street lamps with lights on them. They have street lamps with speakers on it as well. So the light with the speaker. And at the same time, every morning music would play. And I was walking on the seawall at that point that was being constructed. And I noticed when this music would play, the little old lady that I would pass every morning, the same woman with her dog, she'd tie up the lead to the bench that was there, and the construction workers would all stop once the music started, and they'd line up, and they did the same stretch and awakening kind of movement routine every single day. And, I was training people in my studio daily. I have my schedule. I'm hearing their aches and pains, and I started to realize, wait a second. Why don't we have something like this? Why don't we have a way to fit fitness into our workday, to really establish a proper healthy posture habit so that way we can approach whatever it is that we're doing aligned, because when we're aligned, our bodies are at their strongest. And I started to kind of ask questions of my clients at that point and really kind of figure out how we could get a practice like this to the West. And then when I came back to the States, I started testing different ways of fitting fitness into the workday. And I got hit with all kinds of I don't have the time. It's too hard. I don't want to do the same workout every day, every kind of objection under the sun. But what ended up happening, the way that we kicked this all off, people wanted better work days. They just didn't know what better looked like. And so when I started responding to their, I can't, I started producing ways that I can support them that would fit into their workday. And then from there, JoBuFit was born, and there's been many iterations, but really I'm just focused on solving people's problems because they're not the only ones that have these problems, right? Someone says my head and my neck hurt. Another person's going to say, oh, my neck and my shoulder hurts. And that I can teach them little tricks, little tools, actionable movements that do actually help within their workday instead of waiting for the evening class to kind of work out all of the tension from the day.
So I guess most people might think, how am I in pain from just sitting here? Is it the fact that we're sitting so long, or how we're sitting, how we're not moving, or is it just basically coming down to posture, all of the above?
I mean, it's a little bit of everything, right? Our bodies were not made to be sitting for long periods of time. Our bodies were not made to be statues for long periods of time. There's an element of stress manifesting physically. So the majority of stress that comes at us in the day comes from an external source. And when our brains get overloaded, stress will manifest itself physically on us. So body tension, knee bouncing, pen twirling, pen chewing, leaning forward, just different ways that your body will express that it's tired, it's stressed out, it's fatigued, the way that it physically manifests. And then also, like what you were saying, improper posture. When we have bad posture, what typically happens is we hunch forward, right? We drop our chest, our shoulders round forward, our feet tuck underneath our knees, right? They tuck behind us a little bit. And what happens in that, when you're turning sideways, so the people watching this can see, this looks a lot like sleeping in the fetal position. So when you're in that position, what ends up happening is anatomically, we're closing off our airway. And so that means less oxygen is getting to our brain. Our heart pumps slower, our breathing reduces. And that then signals to our brain being in this position and physically not getting enough oxygen. It could be nap time, because our brain doesn't say to us, okay, wait, I'm not laying on my side. I'm not in my bed. It's not dark out. I can't go to sleep now. It says, okay, the oxygen is lowered. I'm not going to be able to focus. I'm not going to get enough done. I'm not going to be able to produce as quickly. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down now so that when I do get that energy boost, when I get that movement, the blood flowing again, my heart pumping up again, I can go back to producing. And so it's really everything above. It has a physical component, a stress component, a mental component. I mean, also too, when was the last time you learned how to sit correctly, right? When you were 5 months old, right? You learned to sit, and nobody ever asks you, are you sitting correctly? Are you sitting on top of your sits bones? Is your spine aligned so it's long and strong and in its proper S curve? Nobody asks you those things. And that is also the issue, because people want to say, buy this because it's ergonomic. And if it's ergonomic, I can can charge X amount more for it because it's going to prop your body up. So you don't have to think about sitting correctly. You don't actually have to know how to sit correctly. Instead, this thing will do the work for you and support you in what someone else's body that it was actually made for, right? If it was even a human being put into it, right? Instead of just being some kind of, drawing that maybe looks cool and being called ergonomic, that's what I've seen a lot of times when I kind of prod and poke at these companies a little bit. And that doesn't do your body any good either. So that's why I always teach proper posture first. Whenever I walk into a room, walk into an in-person, if it's a lunch and learn or a keynote address, the first thing that we address is how to sit. Because proper posture on you is going to look different than proper posture on me, but it definitely has the same steps. So I want you to learn about your body so that way you're long and strong and it's your best and first line of defense against stress so that you can have consistently productive work days.
Is it more of like a generational, because maybe people listening, their grandmother or grandfather, sit up straight. And hearing it now for the first time, you're explaining, yes, that applies, but it's also a very specific way based on how your body is formed, I guess, or how, what's going on with you, stress. Is that something you see where maybe younger generations are just not even in the same kind of realm as maybe our grandparents were when they were that age?
Yeah, I will say that when you were talking about generational differences, my grandmother constantly, sit up, Alessa, sit up tall, like, be present, you're here, participate. Like these are all the things that my grandmother used to say to me when I was a child. And that's definitely a generational thing, right? It was a lot more every Sunday. I was at my grandparents' house for dinner and we were all at the dinner table and it was sit up. And my grandmother would tell me stories about how her piano teacher used to use the broom behind her back so that she would have proper posture while she was playing the piano. My grandmother ended up becoming a professional pianist. So that's a different story, but that really was part of her lifestyle. Now, on top of not having the COVID changed a lot of things, it separated a lot of people. Everything for the most part is digital now. And we're talking about that, even like socializing is a lot of it is digital now. Social media is called social media for a reason, even though it's not very social. But that alone brings us to, kind of fitting ourselves more into our technology. And so you do have that generational divide because of the way that we're socializing and because our socializing does have us like Netflix and binging, things that aren't as movement, or in-person based anymore. But yeah, we try to, our activities are digital. Our activities have us kind of getting into that tech. And especially, I know it's kind of funny to say, but it doesn't matter how close you get to your phone, computer, television, whatever it is, your tech is never going to love you back. So stop trying to fit yourself into it. We really, especially when it comes to our workspace, I always tell people to start with your alignment so that your chair fits you, your desk fits you, and then we get the screen, keyboard, mouse situation set up so that when you approach your desk, your tech is fitting what you need and what your body needs to be successful, instead of saying like, okay, I'm going to get as close as I can so that I can finish this email so that I can earn my break, which is that goes into the stress spiral kind of conversation.
So if someone comes to you and they, are you sort of evaluating what stressors they have in their life, what they're maybe, like you said, working from home or their office? I don't know if cubicles are different than offices with windows and how much sunlight might play a role into these things, or are they all
Sure. I mean, all that stuff is a factor. Yeah. So a couple of things. When someone comes to me as an individual and we have like these one-on-ones, I call them like a one-on-one hour, and we start with their workspace and what their needs are. So if you're a digital designer, sometimes you're drawing actually, or, if you're making a ton of PowerPoints, you're doing a lot of typing and not really so much on your mouse. So people have different physical requirements. And the one thing that I will say is sitting isn't just a work thing, right? You have to sit to eat, you sit to relax. So there are different elements there that once we address the how to sit correctly, then we're going to address the workspace kind of setup. Going back to offices, I know a lot of people are protesting, right? They don't want to be there. They don't want to have to drive there. They want to live wherever they want to live, right? And I get that. You want to have your freedom to be able to walk outside, which is a huge stress releaser on so many levels. You want to be able to work in your own schedule. You want to, whether it is sliding into your desk like 30 seconds before you have to be online, right? But the one thing that's really beneficial about being in an office kind of setting, because it's not your home, there's a little bit more formality there. So like the clothing that you put on definitely helps you stay a little bit more upright, right? You put on a little bit more, like putting on airs, right? You have a little bit more presentation because there's other people around you. So you're not going to act a fool, like, put your feet up on the desk and in an office kind of setting, or at least I hope you wouldn't do that. And then the other thing too is the kitchen in office might not be, 10 steps away. It may be, down a flight of stairs even, and that gets you moving more. And then you also have to plan, right? So you're not, munching on random things. So there's a lot of benefits to going back into an office, including socializing. So social skills, that's a skill. There's a reason why they call it a skill. And it's like a muscle. If you don't work it out, it atrophies. And so we have a lot of issues with people just socializing, which it causes stress when people don't have that professional barrier. I know that sounds really kind of stuffy to say it that way, but when someone then gets affected by something, we now have a generation, I'm triggered on everything. Well, in all actuality, like, get your stuff done, like, stop being triggered about things. If someone says something, maybe they were having a bad day, move on. And so we've lost a little bit of that kind of, we're like overly sensitive for things because we don't have those social skills anymore. And now, that's obviously a little bit outside of my realm, but it does come into play when you were talking about like stress and being in a workplace setting versus, being isolated at home and getting your work done. It doesn't matter where you're working. The same issues happen. You get stressed out. You have to get your work done. You have to make sure you're eating correctly. You need to move so that way not only do you have a little bit of stress relief, but you also are maintaining a healthy body, and you have to have a proper posture practice. Wow, that was a lot to say, to really make sure that everything kind of stems off from that. So yeah, it's like a little bit of everything. What you're talking about is, the sunlight, the setup, the socializing, everything.
Yeah, especially like people working from home. I remember talking to a guy a couple months ago, and he doesn't even have to be on camera. So he's laying in bed on his laptop, just eating.
Yeah.
So there's literally I agree. It's almost like making your bed in the morning, even though you're going to just not see it for another 12 hours and get right back in it. It's that structure, that element that you sort of start your day with. And I'm not sure, maybe you agree, that leads almost to like getting to the office and being presentable to sort of tackle the day.
Yeah. Also, the other element, so I gave a talk at a university. This is going back a few years, and I had, you open it up to Q&A at the end. And one of the girls said, I study in my dorm room a lot. And when you're in a dorm room specifically, you have a bed and you have a desk, right? There's not really anywhere else to sit. You don't have any real more, like, there's no more space for you there. And she straight up asked, do you have any tips for working in bed, like, to get my work done? And I said, yeah, I do. Don't do it, because you want to, just like we were talking about, when your brain doesn't have the ability to say, this position at my desk isn't working, it's sleeping. It says this position is sleep, right? So when you're not allowing your brain that kind of separation and really, putting clothing on or makeup on or doing your hair, or just those like little things that tell your brain, okay, now we're doing X, Y, and Z, that is going to play a part in not only your productivity for your workday, but also your mindset, your mental health, then it goes into your physical health. I mean, it all trickles down, I think is the best way to put it.
So people who are working from home, it's not necessarily a disadvantage. It's just what they can do with the space that they're in and how they can sort of optimize it. Okay. So if someone is like, someone comes to you and they're working from home and they don't have much, maybe they have an animal, a cat or something, or not something they have to walk and they're not going outside, but they're sort of chained to that desk. Like, what are some tips that people could do at home Obviously not sitting in bed and with your laptop. What are
Yeah.
some like simple tips that you could share with people that are in this situation that they could sort of up their game on better posture and just better habits overall?
Yeah. So the main thing that I teach people a framework to have healthy work days. And I teach, it's called the 50-10-50-10 ratio. So for every 50 minutes of committed, completely focused work that you set up for, you spend 10 minutes moving around, right? Because that's a complete hour there. So you can start the hour at the top of the hour, at the bottom of the hour, however you need to do it. You can set it up so that your schedule, you can do a 50-minute meeting or you can do a 20-minute meeting depending on your schedule and how you have the ability to organize. And then that way, when the 50 minutes goes off, then you move around. You can do desk side stretching to de-stress. You can do a breathing exercise. You can add some movement to energize. You can get up, go refill your water, go to the bathroom. You can go make yourself lunch. You can, if you're at home, fold a load of laundry, standing up, load the dishwasher, prep and only prep dinner. Things that get you away from a screen so that you're doing something that's in real life, right? So if you have to write something down, write it down. It's great for your dexterity and for your brain at the same time. And speaking of writing things down, I'm a huge to-do list person, but the one thing that I will say about to-do lists, when you're writing out a to-do list, challenge yourself to write it from easiest task to complete to most difficult or time-consuming task to complete. Now, I'm a person that likes to do the easiest, quickest things first, because then I see the check marks or the crossed outs when it's on my screen, and I'm like, ooh, I got a lot done today. But if you're the kind of person that likes to sit down and like tackle the hard thing, start from the bottom and work your way up. Because then also what it gives your brain is I've accomplished something, but I've also accomplished things within that 50-minute time block, right? So if I have 5 more minutes left, but I already got 3 things done, and the next thing I know it's going to take me a half an hour to do, don't start it. Take your 10-minute break 5 minutes early, move around, and then make sure that when the alarm goes off for that 10 minutes that you're going to sit back down and then conquer the next thing on your to-do list. And then that way it keeps the pace up and it's actually going to make you more productive. Because I know when you write out a to-do list and you're just like, oh, let me just do that. I'll do that. Okay, I'm going to get this done. All right, I got that. It's almost overwhelming when you actually see how many things that you have to get done for that day, right? When instead of just saying like, okay, I'm going to achieve, but if you do it from least easiest, like smallest time commitment to hardest, like longest time commitment, you can almost tell your brain, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this first because I know I can get it accomplished right now. And then the other thing too that I will say is when you're adding movement and a healthy work style into your schedule for your day, you need to give yourself some grace, because if you are in that meeting and you don't have control of the meeting, you're not leading the meeting, you don't have the ability to say, okay, I'm done, right? So if it does go over, then you can tell the people that are in that meeting, okay, I'm going to be here for a little while longer. The meeting ends. Don't just go into your next time block of work. Here is that when you set yourself up in the 50-10 ratio and you do commit to that 50 minutes of focused work, but sometimes you're not in control of your schedule. And so if you have a meeting that goes over that 50 minutes and you have to, push through because you're not in charge of that meeting, if, you finally hang up, maybe it's over an hour, maybe it's an hour and 15 minutes, instead of jumping back in because you missed, quote unquote, your break, give yourself the break then if you can, or reschedule a break within your next break, because within the next schedule gap that you have. It's really about making sure that you are kind to yourself and giving yourself opportunity to pause, realign, put things in perspective instead of trying to beat yourself up to stay with a schedule. I think, especially in the US, it's either like all or nothing for us. And that tends to, lead us to failure, right? Oh, I'll start it tomorrow because I just don't have the time. Maybe next month will be better when I have a better handle on my schedule. No, just start. Even if you can only commit to maybe 3 times movement through your day, that's great. If you don't have control of your schedule, that's better than nothing. So I think that that's the real goal here, is to give yourself grace, and then also at the same time be strict with yourself, because it's really easy to say, all right, I'm going to take my 10 minutes and let that 10 minutes become half an hour, right? You can go do whatever it is and you're like, oh, now I'm procrastinating, but I'm moving around, so I'm being healthy. No, when the timer goes off for those 10 minutes, get yourself back to, checking things off to your to-do list, because your brain and your body are going to, really start to feel that pattern, and it'll start craving that movement. And then you'll be able to that much easier jump into completely focused work once you start getting that rhythm going for your day.
That's a good point, because there are people from friends of mine, or even years ago, they're like assistants to someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
That person is dictating the assistant's schedule, right? They don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to a degree, I'm sure they get a lunch break, right, but that might be a 60-minute break where they're not able to kind of have their day 50-10 in that regard. So they might have to do, like you said, the 30 minutes there and try to make up for it later if they can't do it all incrementally throughout the day. So is the stress, like the people who have stress in their job, not to say everyone that's an assistant is stressed out, but if you work for the wrong boss, I guess you could have a stress life at work and then a stress life at home. People that might have trouble just getting started, where do you begin with them?
Specific when it comes to stress?
Yeah, like, so if your whole lifestyle is just high stress level, and they're like, I don't even know how I would fit this in because my schedule is so chaotic, and I get home and I have kids and I have this and I have to get bedtime stories and baths, and I don't have any time to myself. I'm commuting in the car, and then I'm back to work at home. Next morning I'm back to work, and they just feel like they don't have the time to really, which I agree with you, the self-care and that's huge. But there are a lot of people that will say they don't have any time to do this. Is there a small way they can start, like a beginner? Yeah.
So I love incognito fitness is kind of what I've called these things. So at a desk or at a table, like if you're feeding your kids, or if you're, at in a big giant boardroom, little things that you can do that no one knows that you're doing it. So a 3-step posture check is like the easiest way to get yourself realigned. Check your feet, make sure both feet are firmly on the ground, all 10 toes are pointed forward, and actually look down at your feet, so that way you're establishing a brain body connection. And then you move up to your spine. The second step is imagining that there's one strand of hair at the top of your head that's pulling you all the way up. And so you're really getting longer that way, because sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to sit up tall, I'm going to stick my chest out, or I'm going to stick my bum backwards, and that's going to mess up your alignment. And then the last thing you're going to do is you're just going to like shake your head, no, I'm not ready for my work day, but yes, I'm going to practice proper posture, and I'm going to release tension in my head and neck. And so something as simple as that, which can take you 10, 15 seconds really, is a really awesome way to kind of pull yourself back together and then bring body awareness back into the situation. So if you're holding tension in some place, you can say like, oh, look, now I'm upright. This is a great way to solve it. And that's the first, obviously, posture part. And then when you get into some movement, it's really easy to sit at a table. It doesn't matter if it's a work table or a dining table, and march it out. So right now, as I'm talking to you, if someone's watching this, I'm walking under my desk, but you can't tell that I'm moving around. But that way you're getting that movement in, you're engaging your core, you're also getting that blood flowing to your lower extremities, and you're getting a little bit in there. Now, if you're a parent and you're home and the stress happens there, what is something that's really easy to do? You have to use the bathroom, you have to go to the kitchen, right? You have little things that kind of take you away from whoever you're caring for. It's super simple to just reach your arms all the way up to the lights, drop them down to your side, nice and easy, tuck your chin to your chest, roll all the way down, and put your hands on the floor. You can bend your knees if your hands don't touch the floor with your legs extended. Take 3 deep breaths here, roll all the way back up nice and slowly. And if you have time to repeat that, you can repeat that 3 to 5 times. You're really going to take like gravity pull you forward. You're going to extend against gravity to then let gravity relax you all the way down. Again, that's elongating your spine. It's relaxing. You're putting your body back into that, you're putting your mind and body back into that brain body awareness situation. And those are the first like couple of things that you can do that you can address first that only take 30 seconds to 1 minute. And then you can slowly start to trick your brain to say like, okay, I'm going to add a little bit more here, especially if you have young kids and you start to have your kids getting older and you're able to do a little bit more away from them or even parallel to them. Really, I mean, we were talking about sitting and learning to sit before we made this go live. And something that's really also a nice parallel to it is the fact that we don't crawl as adults, and crawling has a lot of benefits to it, right? So it's opposite hand and leg, it's core mobility. We're working on the stabilizer muscles there. So if you have young children at home, play and crawling is also a really great way to like sneak fitness in there as well. Now, if you're in an office, I do not suggest you get on the floor and start crawling. I also don't suggest any kind of fitness where you have to get on the floor there, but there is, I believe, there's like a yoga move or something. It's like a bug move or something that you can do where you can mimic kind of that crawling, which is to lift one leg up and then the opposite hand can go up and then you reverse it. So even in your desk, you can do that too, which works the same stabilizers in your core and that. So if you really want to do some crawling at your desk and you're seated in Workspace, that'll work for you as well. But there's so many other things that you can do that instead of even it taking 10 minutes, 30 seconds to a minute, it's going to be beneficial for your brain and your body.
That's great advice because there are so many people that they feel like they're just nonstop and constantly on the go, and they have time, like you said. Everyone has to eat. Everyone, there are things you need to do, but I do picture like the person with a kid on one side, the other kids pulling at them on the other end, and they're just after their hour commute from work, and right. So there's a great advice. But you also have a book, correct?
Yes, I have a book. It was a challenge that I made to myself when this is pre-COVID, and I had a digital program that I would offer to companies, and every month I would offer a free download that would accompany the month's worth of content and movement for your workday. And at the end of the year, I was like, wow, what am I going to do with all of this? And I decided that I was going to turn it into a book. And so it has a little bit of everything. I call it the Ultimate Workspace Toolkit right here. And it's tiny so that you can take it with you, because that's the goal. I call it Tiny But Mighty Toolkit. And it has everything in there. There is how to set up your workspace, how to sit or stand at your workspace, depending on how you like to work. There's basic stretching, there's movements, there's exercises for your fingers, toes, and eyes, which I call your forgotten body parts because they work very hard for us during the day and they need some love too. There's even ways to take brain breaks in here if you're just so overwhelmed with everything and you can just push your chair back. There's a couple of games in here that are your brain breaks. And then especially if you're going back to the office and you want to stay healthy and moving around with your coworkers, you can do walking meetings. And I have a worksheet in here that you can use to set up a proper walking meeting. And it helps people figure out what you're going to speak about in this meeting, where you're going to walk. If it's a long distance walk, then you need to change your shoes if you want to change your shoes, obviously. And it has kind of that planning ahead element that you don't necessarily need if you're going to be sitting in a boardroom, right? We want to make sure that we know who's going to be in attendance in this meeting, especially if we're going to be just, texting notes on our phones instead of just actually being able to sit down. You get all of the little bits out of the way so that you can just dive into your meeting. So it's a really great, extra little tool to use. So it works on interpersonal skills a little bit there, even though I like to focus on the movement, but your brain body connection is huge for your success in your workday. So I thought I add that right at the end.
No, that's clever. I mean, especially the getting together and having the walking meetings, because I've heard of people doing walking challenges, but at their office, maybe there's monthly, right? But to actually be able to sort of multitask, I know multitask, some people don't like that word, but to be able to, get the movement in while getting the work done. And would that count as like the 50 or the 10 if you were doing the walking?
That I would say, well, I've never been asked that question before. That's a really good question. I don't know. I would say that if you're a sitting desk person, that would count towards more of your movement for the day. If you're a standing desk person and you went for a walk, I would suggest coming back and sitting down just to give your body like a proper break, which is also what I have a little bit about that in the book, but also what I teach people in general at standing desks, because people think I'm going to get myself a standing desk because it's going to be healthier. But in all actuality, it's the same problem, just in the opposite direction, because just as we're not created to sit all day long, we're also not created to stand like statues all day long either. And so sitting then periodically throughout your day, especially to eat so you can help your digestion there, but also to relax, maybe take a phone call seated instead of standing periodically through your day. Just little things of observing your body needs and taking proper breaks so that way you don't get fatigued, even if you are standing for your health.
That's true, because I do know a lot of people who are sold on the standing desk, and it's like, that's the best. That's the answer. It's going to fix everything. And it's very interesting to hear you say that it's good, it's fine, but you have to have a balance. And most people, they hear sit and they think now it's bad. Or you get the reverse with the people that have those, like they can, like you're talking about doing steps underneath your desk and no one can really tell. So it's almost becoming like polarized between the two sides. But so you're saying the balance would be ideal?
Feel.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a standing desk. It's not my favorite way to kind of use my workspace, to like utilize a workspace. I know that it works for some people because of health issues, who like people who can't sit down because of back issues or leg issues or hip issues. So standing works better for them. They're just like we were talking about not learning how to sit correctly. Very frequently, people don't know how to stand correctly. They have the low sway in their lower back. The hunch is still there, especially if they're not adjusting the desk to the right height to be at that angle for your elbow. So with your keyboard, and if you have to look down, the same thing with your screen, you need to adjust the screen so that you're properly looking forward and you're not looking down at it, because that will lead to the same hunch. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be taken into account when you're at a standing desk, just as there's things that you need to kind of focus on when you're at a sitting desk as well. But also when you're standing, you can step your feet wider so that you can have a lower center of gravity. There's things that you can do to kind of vary and break that statue lifestyle, but also to protect your back, making sure that you're using your core. On my website, you can go and watch like the full length video of how to sit and stand correctly, which then becomes 6 steps instead of just the 3 that we were mentioning before. But the last step in my full length video of how to stand correctly, I call it the Michael Jackson lean, which takes your body just like 5 degrees forward. So you can't even notice it. And it's actually a ballet posture adjustment. That the reason why ballerinas do it is because it takes the stress off of their back, their spinal muscles, and their spine, and it puts it into the core. And your core muscles, very frequently when you're working out, I'm sure you've heard this term, your core is your powerhouse. And so putting that kind of added tension and pressure into your core will relieve the back, and then it'll also help you stand upright a little bit more. And so that's a step that I show in the video if you're interested in seeing how that actually plays out. And that way it'll take the pressure off of your back. But again, you have to have the right workplace setup. You have to get your tech to fit you and not you fitting into your tech, because that's really the way that balance there is the way that you're going to succeed for your whole day.
And what about for people who, some work 7 days a week, but maybe someone that works 40 to 50 hours a week, 5 days a week? Are there tips for the days off that they should be doing, whether it's posture or mindfulness?
Well, the one thing I will say is stop pushing through your workday and living for the weekend. That is a big thing, because the only thing that's going to happen then on your weekends is you're thinking like, oh my God, I have to go back to work, right? And that's not healthy, right? There's so many people that live for their vacations. They live for holiday days. They have all of these like, if I do this, then I get this. And so people who are living for the then of the weekend and the socializing and everything else really they're not present within their workday. And so it's not so much of a things to do on the weekend. It's more of a let's find the balance throughout every single day. I'm sure you've heard people talk about like, going to sleep and waking up. And just because it's the weekend, staying up to 2 o'clock in the morning and then waking up at 10 a.m. isn't the best thing for your body, right? It messes up your sleep patterns. So it's similar concept, but in dealing with like your physical, like movement health in that way, is don't go crazy on the weekends and do all of the things that you couldn't fit into your work week, like the extra workouts. So, all of that kind of thing, because it's not going to make up for what you didn't do during the week. It's fine. Like, if you want to go for a run, you're in a running club, and then you go take that Pilates class and you do the HIIT class one day a weekend, go for it. Like if that's what you're going to do, by all means, it's summertime now, go play tennis, golf, whatever sport you want, like do the things, don't deprive yourself on the weekends, but also know that movement and healthy choices through your week are really what's going to make sure that you can continue your work-life balance without burnout, because that's the real goal.
Yeah, adding more stress to when you're trying to de-stress.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then that Sunday night, everyone's like, oh, that Sunday night prep. How stressful is that? If that's your thought process on a Sunday night to say like, oh my God, I got to prep for the entire week tonight, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to do like little bits throughout the week so that when the weekend comes, I can relax. And then Monday's here and it's Monday. I'm going to work. It's not like a Sunday night. I need to organize absolutely everything.
Right. Yeah. And for people who are listening, do you work with people like remotely, or if someone they want to reach out to you, like read about your book, what would be the best place to get in touch with you, to connect with you and work with you?
Sure. So LinkedIn is always the best place for me. Send me a DM there. You can also, the link in my LinkedIn bio will take you to, I have a email list where once a week I send out it's a 3-minute email that sometimes it has movement, sometimes it has a workplace health tip. It kind of runs the gambit of things. Right now we're in a little bit of a stress series. So how to manage stress within your workday. And it's a 3-minute read. You can go in there. If you're looking for something that can help you now, I do have a one-on-one hour, which is also in that link as well. If you click on the LinkedIn link there, you can also just send me a message on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. On TikTok and Instagram, I'm at Alessa.Caridi, my first and last name. On Facebook, I'm at JoBuFit, JoBuFit, which is my business. Send me a message and I'll send you all the information if that's easier. And then always on social media, which is, not very social, but I'm constantly posting movement things that you can add like now into your day to kind of solve the problems. And then, if I go into companies frequently. I do a lot of digital things. If it's a 30-minute lunch and learn, if they want to provide little health initiatives for your business, I do those as well. And then in-person stuff, I do conferences and all the fun things that, public speaking brings. And it's good because you get to travel to some cool places. You get to see different ways that people work, stress, and then I can, hop in there and solve those problems. So I really love seeing those like light bulb moments of how I can change a schedule, a workday, a setting, even like the smallest little thing to help people have better days.
No, I can tell. I mean, it's just listening to you, you're clearly passionate about it. And I think it's just what people don't really put an emphasis on that they should be doing, which is why I wanted to talk with you, because I have so many friends and look, I'm sitting at a desk, right? So getting that advice from you and hearing someone that's really put their whole, you're so knowledgeable about this topic, but it's something that, again, when was the last time someone told you how to sit properly? Right? It comes back and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so important how it connects to so many other different things in your body and the importance of it. So, thank you for sharing that with everyone, of course.
Thank you. When I go into offices, it's usually one person that brings me in there. Then, people reluctantly or not are there. And more often than not, by the end, the person that's sitting in the back corner of the room comes up to me and says, I thought my work days were good, but now I feel like I'm having a better day because I just added stretching. And they don't know exactly what's wrong, but adding just like a little bit of movement to their day makes it that much better. And my goal is to then get your brain to say, I need this. I'm going to move just a little bit more. And then I'm going to, add like this in the afternoon, or I'm going to add a stretch session at lunchtime. And those tiny things are little adjustments, because the goal here is not to change your entire day, but just really help you get into that mindset so that you can age gracefully, stay away from the painkillers, and look at this, like this little movement practice as a vitamin, so that you don't need the Advil or the chiropractor or the surgery down the line.
I don't know who would disagree with that. So that's a great way to put it. But thank you so much for your time today. And I'll put your...
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'll put all the information in the show notes so people can reach out to you directly. And it's been really great to get to know you, and we will keep in touch.
Thank you. I really appreciated this.
Thanks, Alessa.